Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello and welcome to this episode. This is Mike Saunders with the Marketing Huddle, and today I have with me Bob Lancer with Bob Lancer Seminars and Consulting. Welcome to the show, Bob.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be with you.
Hey, so thank you so much for your time, and what I'd like to start off with asking you is share with us a little bit about your background and what inspired you to become an entrepreneur and what motivates you to help others.
You know, it really comes down to a sense of profound spiritual calling that I have experienced, pretty much all my life. And I just found this interest in, following the path that it felt like God laid out for me and staying true to that. And, that's the nature of the work that I do, and that's where I serve people from. So it really, for me, some people say it's lucky, but or fortunate. It's had its trials, of course. But, for me, it's always been, I've always been a deeply spiritual human being, and that sense of spiritual inspiration, for lack of a better term, or you could call it life more abundant, however you want to define it. That's what's led me throughout my life and throughout my professional life.
That's awesome, and you said something interesting, with you feel lucky, or some people say you're lucky, and I'm sure you've heard the quote before, something to the effect of, luck or that kind of thing is where preparation meets opportunity, meaning, he's just an overnight success. Yeah, but it took me 30 years to be that overnight success, and you've got to have that preparation. And I would say this too, you mentioned something really profound just kind of in passing, just follow, God's plan for my life. Well, that's only half the equation. The first half of it is knowing and sensing and perceiving what is God's plan for your life and business. So I would like to ask you, because a lot of people, you don't just Google, "Dear God, what is my purpose and plan in life?" and then you get this checklist and then you follow it. The easy part's following it, but how do you find it? And of course, we could spend 4.5 days on that question, but how did you find that it became obvious to you?
Well, that's the part that people have called me lucky or fortunate about. A lot of people don't have a sense of clear direction in their lives. For me, it's always been kind of a no-brainer, and I mean that literally, because you don't find your spiritual guidance, you don't find that profound sense of calling when you just know when you're being called, you know when you're being led, you know when you have to do something. It feels like it's a matter of life and death. It feels like to stay alive, you've got to follow this path. I mean, it's that clear. And so people have called me lucky in the sense of just knowing my life direction, from the time I was 18. It was really clear to me what my life was going to be about. So how do you find it? Some people believe it happens by grace, that it finds you. The preparation that I did for it, it's like from the time I was 3 years old, the one thing that I hungered for was wisdom. I just felt like I didn't know how to live. I didn't know what was going on. And I hungered to know at a very deep level what is actually happening and what am I supposed to do about it and how am I supposed to live my life. And it became a very deep internal pain that led in my teenage years to a lot of rebellion and a lot of anger. And a lot of trouble. I was a troubled kid, and I took troubled paths and gravitated toward roots of rebellion because I wasn't getting the answers that I needed And kind of like the prodigal son, when I realized that wasn't working for me, and I felt like I literally got to the end of my rope, and I uttered a prayer. But the prayer I uttered was not mental. It was from this deep, deep level of knowing that it's time for me to know.
Because you were sick and tired of being sick and tired, and it kind of got...
Yeah, I mean, I was literally at the end of my rope. I was literally, not wanting to go on in the way that life was working for me. And, 3 days after I uttered this prayer, I met a mentor, and he started helping me to clarify and become aware of this calling and to validate it, help me to validate the calling. And then, so he was following his calling, and his calling is to help other people follow their calling. And that became my calling.
So
to really help people to connect with their true calling, not just from a large life direction, but from a moment-to-moment direction. That's what I help business people to do, is to follow their calling in every daily challenge.
Yeah, I love that aspect of moment to moment, because too many times you how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. We've all heard that. But the issue is sometimes people think of this whole big 30,000-foot view. I can't do this. But in reality, can you just do what's right in front of you? Well, I can do that. Well, then you take the next step, and can I do what's right in front of me? Yeah, I can do that. And then the other aspect that what you just said made me think of is being aware of the things that are going on around you, because whatever the situation was when you met this mentor, I'll bet if you weren't ready and you weren't searching and looking, it would have flown right on by you, and you would have, the chance meeting would have just been a chance meeting, or whatever the case is. So I think that we need to have that awareness around us to go, you know what, this gut feel, is it a gut feel, or is this how God is leading me? And that is how a lot of times people discount how the Holy Spirit leads. And many times it is that feel or that opportunity. And then on the other hand, there are some times where something comes across your path and you go, yay, God, that's a great thing. Thank you for opening that door. Well, wait a minute. Let's make sure. Let's kind of test it. Make sure that it is falling in line with what God's plan would be for our life and our business, because there would be some times that you are presented an opportunity and it's not a good thing. So you mentioned working with business people and leadership. How does all of those concepts play into how you advise and work and mentor business leaders?
Well, it's a funny thing, because there are a lot of business people who are doing extremely well are not interested in sort of awakening to a deeper sense of calling. They think that they're winning the game because they're making millions and millions of dollars, and they're, going on luxury, global trips, and they're buying phenomenal gifts for their families, and if they're experiencing any emptiness, they feel that the solution to that is just get more, take on another business, prove myself again. But then there are others, and you were talking earlier about being ready. Being in that place of readiness. And those are the individuals that I work with, those who are looking for a deeper life experience and beginning to become aware of the dissatisfaction of just winning society's game by society's rules, which are very external, which are very, money is a symbol. It's not necessarily, you can't really do anything with it. It's a symbol, and you can use it symbolically to buy stuff, but it doesn't mean that you should buy that thing. What guides you in the use of the money you have? How do you know what to do with it? What guides you in your current situation? So there are business people out there, and they're growing in number, who want to feel this sense of security and safety and fulfillment and purpose, because some area, and often the area of their life that sends them to me, is their children. Their children's lives are falling apart. And they're recognizing, that matters. What's falling apart matters more to me than what's coming together. And maybe what's going on is somehow I'm off the beam. Somehow I've strayed from the beam that I'm really supposed to be on. So then when they interact with me, from what I get from their feedback is they just get a feeling. Yeah, this just feels right for me. This feels like the right path for me. How do I surrender in order to manifest the kingdom? The kingdom of a prosperous life where I have beautiful, harmonious relationships and a sense of purpose and fulfillment. And I feel really good about myself deep down inside. I feel right about who I am. How do I follow that path? And they can feel from me a connection to their true path.
And you mentioned the kids, and that might become one of those indicators, kind of like the little breadcrumb. They don't really consciously realize that they themselves have a leadership opportunity, not a problem, but an opportunity. But the thing that maybe triggers them to contact you or work with you is something with the kids. Well, it strikes me that once you get your house in order, your home in order, all of a sudden now it's like, okay, now let's move on to this area and this area. So you mentioned surrendered. What do you mean by surrendered leadership?
That's a beautiful, beautiful question. And regarding the kids, the way that I relate to it, and it's not always the children. Sometimes it's a health issue. Sometimes it's a marriage issue. It could be, lots of different things. It's often the kids' issue. And I call that the phenomenon of the parrot in the mine, the parakeet in the mine. Coal miners used to bring a parakeet down into the mine with them. And if the parakeet started struggling for air, they knew that there was going to be an oxygen problem and they'd have to run up to the surface. So the kids are often sort of the parakeet that indicate, there's a problem here and we got to go higher.
Interesting.
So surrendered leadership is really about letting go of everything you think you know, letting go of control. Because it's the attempt to keep in control of your life that's driving you insane, literally. The stress and the anxiety of that. And surrendering into this feeling of complete safety in the arms of God. Truly feeling, people talk about being saved, and I equate that with being safe.
Yeah.
For you to truly, truly feel safe in this universe, safe in this life, safe in the arms of God, safe in God's love, for you to truly just surrender all sense of control over your life, your fear starts to melt away, and a true sense of knowing starts to unfold inside of you. But the sheer glory of that surrender is what brings so much relaxation and so much harmony in your relationships, and it allows everybody around you to feel safe and to flourish. So that's what surrendered leadership is, and I guide people through a very specific process of deepening and deepening and deepening their surrender, their ability to let go of control in order to experience the success and the fulfillment and the peace for themselves and for those they love that they're really looking for.
So Scripture teaches, be still and know that I am God. Do you tie those two concepts together in that way?
Absolutely. The stillness comes through surrender. Yeah. Right now, if everybody listening to the show would just try this as an exercise, just try to relax and notice your feelings wherever you're trying to hold on control. That's like you're saying, okay, God, you created this magnificent universe. I'll take over from here.
Yep.
And we're really not designed to take over. We're designed to be an agent of that which is in charge. And so if you'll just try to relax right now into this feeling of complete relaxation, into the trust that whatever is going to happen is going to be good for you, that life is good for you, that the truth is good for you, that you really don't have anything to worry about or anything to fear. You are in this perfect place of loving support and safety, and you don't have a thing to worry about. And as you practice living in that space and feeling yourself in that space more and more and more, you start discovering things opening up for you in miraculous ways.
I'll bet that you mentioned some of the leaders you work with are highly successful. I'll bet that there's quite a pull or a resistance that they have internally to follow some of those concepts because they feel like they're the alpha male times 10.
Well, and they feel like they have to be.
Yeah.
And they feel like they get a lot of kudos, a lot of appreciation and respect for being, fulfilling that role. So yeah, the process is often gradual to lead them gently into this process. Not everybody is open to it. Like I said, a lot of people think they're winning the game by driving the car. But the reality is that doesn't actually pay off internally, because the way that life is designed is it's designed to lead you to this place of surrender. So the more you try to hold on and control the thing out of fear, the harder it gets to do so. Mm-hmm. And the more things, it's like a car that's driving too fast, it just starts to rattle and break.
Yeah, I've heard the sayings before. Faith ends where fear begins.
Well, sure. I mean, if all the worry that you go through, all the stress that you go through. I work with CEOs with executives, with entrepreneurs who have, maybe $10, $15 million net worth, who are worrying and stressed out and trying to get money from here and get money from there to fund this next thing in a profitable way. And so, people want to be prosperous. They want a lot of money, but they're not really looking at why they want it. And you want it for the peace. And what's funny is that the peace is available right now.
Yeah.
And the more you count on getting something to give you peace, the more you need to get, and the less peace you wind up experiencing.
Yeah, it's kind of like a vicious cycle because, the concept of it's not the achieving of the goal, it's who you become while you're working toward achieving the goal. And a lot of times you get to that pinnacle and go, okay, here's that goal, check. And then you start looking around for 2 seconds and go, now what? And you're not satisfied, and you won't be satisfied with the next goal and the next goal because in reality you haven't laid that foundation of why you want it or who you need to become to achieve or earn that goal or whatnot. And I think that you have seen that many times in your consulting too. So let's say that a leader surrenders and follows the process and is successful in your process and your system. What's the impact on them, and then what's the impact on their organization?
It's tremendous. The impact on them is that they find that they're needing to do less and less. That it's just by being in this state of consciousness, that leadership is a state of being. It's not a condition of doing. And that as they really connect with this sense of calling on a moment-to-moment basis, they become calmer and stiller, and things just sort of become easier and more joyful and lighter for them. So the experience of the individual is just this sense of freedom and joy and love expanding, and they start to bring that into the organization. And what happens to the people in the organization is they start to feel free. They start to feel safe. Their gifts and talents and sense of inspiration and appreciation all start to flourish. They begin feeling like equals instead of in a hierarchy. They all feel like they are a valued and valuable part of the organization. And that translates into fabulous marketing. Because when you have people who are happy in an organization, they just go out in the streets expressing their joy, and expressing how much they love where they work. That's good marketing. Yeah. And at the same time, in terms of sales and customer service, you just find that the joy that the people are experiencing within the organization, which is a reflection of the joy that the leader is experiencing, the people are always a reflection of the leader, then the customers and the prospects all become enamored with this organization.
Yeah.
And they want to express their appreciation. It's like, have you ever gone to a restaurant or a store and you said, I just want to support this place.
Yeah.
I really want this place to do well. Have you ever had that experience?
Yeah, and a lot of times it's in a smaller town, and the owner's working in the shop, and there is that vibe and that environment, and yeah, I mean it's unfortunately these days it's not very common, but yeah, you do run into it once in a while.
And that's the kind of customer. That's what you want to do for your customer. You want your customers to appreciate you, to want you to be in business, to want to support you. That's what you're looking for. And
well, and another aspect, too, is I'm sure every industry is different, but the logistical dollar amount of onboarding a new employee if a disgruntled employee leaves is a large dollar figure. So if you have those happier employees, they're staying longer and doing all the other things you mentioned, too, but just that employee retention from a marketing standpoint, it costs 5 to 7 times more money to get a new customer than retain one, but I'll bet it's the same type of correlation with keeping a current employee rather than going out and finding and getting a new employee and onboarding them.
Absolutely, but the challenge with the old, what I call the old business mindset, is it's like this attitude of being too big to fail. There are CEOs who are making a lot of money or making a lot of sacrifice for the company, and their attitude is, if you're not happy here, then just go. Sure, we'd love to keep you, but we're not. You're replaceable, and if you should be grateful to be here, and that's the general attitude. You talk about dollar figure, and apparently this doesn't matter to a lot of successful people, but one Gallup poll shows that disengaged workers who are disengaged because they're dissatisfied cost the American economy $500 billion a year. There are all kinds of studies out there that show that happy employees make more successful companies, but from a lot of CEOs who are really just focused on the numbers and who are successful that way, they really don't pay attention to that. They don't feel they need to pay a whole lot. They want people to be happy, but they basically have an attitude of using people instead of loving people. There's care, but there's a sense of using people, and I'm in charge and I'm the boss. And so you have a lot of people who just don't feel valued in the workplace. And there's a lot of people who are a lot of companies that are being very, very successful. I've worked as a consultant for companies that were very, very financially successful, and everybody there was very, very unhappy, very unfulfilled, and
so they were successful in spite of themselves.
They have some kind of gift for working with the numbers, but in terms of working with their own employees, it was absent. And so that also tells you what kind of people are they in their family, what's their personal life going to be like. So there's a holiday there. So
that made me think of 2 things. Number one, I'll bet you there's some leaders out there that hear that Gallup poll and see other polls like that and go, ooh, yeah, we want to be successful, so we want to get our employees happy. So let's bring in a consultant, go work with our employees. Well, maybe that's an element of it, of course, but it starts with what you were just mentioning earlier, that top-down surrendered leadership, because when the employees are being worked on, they need to have a consultant working with them as well to work on from the top down and the bottom up at the same time.
It is absolutely true that the most influential individual in an organization is the head. But what's interesting, and I can't explain it, I cannot explain this, but I have found it to be the case, that it could be anyone in the organization who begins to connect with the sense of calling on a continuous basis through what I call the active surrender, through this kind of consulting right there. Any individual who starts to do that has a ripple effect on the organization. And it's the same thing in family.
Let's think about that in a sports sense. Sure. I'm a big Denver Bronco fan, and so I know that there's been many games this season that been three and out, and then stutter, and then all of a sudden one breakout play happens. And it doesn't have to be the quarterback or the typical, it could be special teams returning a punt all the way. And then all of a sudden the whole game changes. So to your point, sure, the leader is a big factor, but it could be some of the employees that one or two start to get on that role, and other people start looking up out of the cubicles going, what you got going on? And then it just starts spreading that way as well.
Yeah, the most common situation that I'm brought in as is like a company will say, we're doing well financially, we're doing really well financially, but our morale has never been lower. And so the CEO, wants to find out, and typically there's just this culture of resentment toward the one in charge. That's the problem. And so just by helping individuals, when you're following your calling, there's no time to resent anyone. You're never called to resent. You're never called to feel jealous. You're never called to want someone to do something that they seem unwilling to do. You're never called to enter a power struggle. Your calling always comes from a place of peace to a place of peace. So when you're really following your calling, you're feeling this internal sense of alignment with yourself, and you're experiencing this sense of joy and completion and wholeness, and it feels like everything is just working beautifully. And the emotions that come up are gratitude and appreciation and compassion and understanding, and the only desire you have is to give more of yourself. To give more of your gifts and talent.
Let's say that I'm a leader hearing this going, this makes sense to me. I want to find out more, but I've got one question. I'm an alpha male, and I want this to happen. How long is it going to take? And I know what your answer is going to be. It's different and it varies, but how do you then consult and counsel with someone that looks at this as an opportunity to go A plus B equals C, let's get it done and move on?
Well, every alpha male recognizes that the most advantageous situation would be to connect with a level of being, that is infinitely more alpha than you are.
Yep.
To be your model, to be your support, to be your teacher, to be your guide. And that's what happens through surrendered leadership. You connect to a much vaster power where you feel far more in control because you recognize everything is really under control. But, it's something I do remotely. I can do over the phone. I do via Skype with people overseas. And we go as slowly, as gently as you want to go. But what happens immediately is you just start to experience this release from these internal patterns that are actually standing in the way of you experiencing the kind of fulfillment, the kind of peace, and the real financial security that you're looking for. You're not just looking for more. You're looking for more of a sense of security and safety, and the feeling that that abundance is just not an issue for you, that your life is really about giving and serving and expressing your gifts and contribution and the joy of that. So, it happens it happens quickly, but how sort of intense the change is, that really depends on each individual. And we work together gently as you need it. I work with men on this. I work with women on this. And both seem to get it. And I think we're living in a time where people are just opening up more, and they're realizing that, this spiritual world is real.
Yeah. Well, I've really enjoyed learning more about you and your business and what you do to impact people's lives. So in closing, what's the best way that listeners can learn more about you and get in touch with you?
Simplest way is just to go to my website, bob@boblancer.com. B-O-B at I'm sorry, that's my email. Just go to boblancer.com.
Yeah, either one works, but boblancer.com or then the email of bob@boblancer.com.
Yeah. I have a number of websites for my motivational speaking, because I do this as a keynote speaker as well. I present this message to large groups, not just to individuals in consulting. I do work with a lot of sales teams and marketing teams, because it's amazing when you apply this to selling. Following your calling and selling,
see where it goes.
The whole game. Changes the whole game.
Well, thank you so much for all you do, and it's been a pleasure talking with you today.
My pleasure too, Mike. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.